Well, here we are out at the farm trying to get this old 67 or so JD 400 to run. We got it a few years back, and I guess I'll post the video link in the description below of when we brought it home kind of and fired it up for the first time in God knows how long. So anyway, we've kind of worked over the hydraulics here, and it's kind of the first startup, so we're working through that. We can see the Galaxy in its grave right now, so it hasn't driven since 2015. As you know, the engine's been in the F100, so probably going to pull the 289 out of that old F100 and overhaul it, and it's going to land right back in this car. It's got a T5 5-speed and 411 posi traction that me and my dad built back in high school. I drove it all the way to Virginia, drove it all summer, and drove it all the way back home, and from here that's 1,400 miles one way, so it's a really solid car. It's a real shame that it's been sitting here, but anyway, I'm sure we'll get to that eventually. So like I said, real sad deal. Real good car, honestly. But anyway, this is our task at hand today, putting gas in our Hudakide gas tank on account of the actual gas tank having some holes in it. Trying to get everything timed up because, you know, we really have no idea if that was right at all. So kind of worked the distributor over and had this whole front end of this tractor blown apart, which is pretty tough. Everything's pretty darn heavy on a tractor. I mean, that whole thing is just a solid chunk of steel, so moving that all out of the way was just awesome. So anyway, we're gonna test to see if we have spark here, and I'm trying to get it to top dead center. So yeah, just working through that stuff. All right, so we got everything set up. Gonna go ahead and see if we have spark just to verify, so we don't really have a test light today, so want to go ahead and turn it over. Okay, well apparently we have spark, and apparently it runs on 3 cylinders. And apparently we've got the distributor back into somewhat the right position. So I guess we're gonna go ahead and put our spark plug in and fire it off. Darn thing was trying to idle. So I guess, okay, you got your choke on. You know, when it starts, that choke actually kicks itself off. That's interesting. So you must be at low throttle now. Yeah, we will have to slap a tachometer onto it. Well, it's idling. That's pretty impressive. I wouldn't have thought that. Well, it looks like at least the mechanicals of it are working, so put it in gear and let the clutch out, and it seems to do something. That's always a benefit. Be nice if the shifters had some labeling, so we really haven't done any research into it and have any idea what we're even trying to do. That's apparently backwards. We got that down. No hydraulics apparently, so gonna have to do a little bit more work there, I guess. Imagine that. But that wasn't obvious that we didn't know what we were doing. Well, it's good to see it goes in forward and reverse.
You can't expect miracles.
Nope. Yeah, I don't know why they designed that where the overflow dripped literally right in front of the radiator. So it went through the radiator and the fan threw it everywhere. And of course, pulled it back, threw it all over the exhaust and onto everything hot. So Makes a lot of good sense. All right, here we go. Round 2 with the hydraulics today. Did a little work on the carburetor after it sat for a few years and such, and it's running and idling pretty healthy here. So hopefully our hydraulics, we can get those working today. Got a few items where we can test our hydraulic circuits. So kind of a little backstory: when we bought this thing, the guy before us had bought it out of a field where it sat for however many years, forever. You can tell it looks just like it sat and just rusted into the ground. But anyway, I kind of have a feeling that with the hydraulic fluid we drained out of it back in the day, that you know, the pump on the front, which runs all the hydraulics, wasn't necessarily bad before, but when the guy who bought it right before us, he got it and he fired it up and tried to run things, and the bucket went halfway up, and then everything kind of stopped. And I have a feeling that he toasted this front pump. But anyway, you know, you always want to, when you pull things out of the woods and the weeds and out of the bush, you want to make sure you change all your fluids before you try and light it off or use it, especially stuff like pumps and engines that have close bearing and cylinder tolerances. But anyway, all that aside, we're going to go ahead and work through this thing today. But so far, engine's running healthy and can't complain about that, at least. All right, so looking at our vintage user manual here, we're going to go ahead and see if we can figure out what's going on with our hydraulics. So we got a pressure gauge on here and a gate valve, and well, kind of a gate valve. Anyway, our front pump here, it's driven off the crankshaft with a coupling, should produce what was it, 1 gallon every 10 seconds or something to that effect. So we're hoping just to see something. So anyway, we'll see what we can determine from this. All right, so we're gonna fire this thing up and throttle it to 2500, which is awesome because we don't have a tach, but want to make sure that we're in neutral here. Pushing our hydraulic clutch. Probably needs a choke again. Give it some throttle, see what happens. There we go. So with the clutch pressed in here, we're going to give it some throttle. And when we let out our clutch, it should engage our hydraulics and we should see some flow. So I'm assuming this is around 2500, maybe. So we're going to let out our clutch here. And we're not seeing any flow whatsoever. Alright, so since we're not getting any flow, we're just going to go ahead and start from the source. So we verified up to here. This is the directional valve we see here. It's working down there, and we can actually go in forward and reverse. So I believe we're getting fluid flow at least to there, possibly. So the next thing we're after here is this is our sender line up to the main pump. So what I'm going to refer to as the charge pump, which is located in the transmission here. We're going to go ahead and get a gauge off the side of this. This is the power steering line. So we're factoring out our power steering in case it has an issue and it's taking all of our fluid or something. You can tell we don't super know what we're doing, but we're working through as best we can. So we're going to get a gauge on this guy here and see if we're getting any pressure up to this point. I did see a little bit of fluid actually drip out of there, so I'm encouraged. Gauge is on here. Right now we're testing out our let's just, for easier terminology, call it our charge pump inside of our case here that sends fluid up to the main pump turned by the engine. So what we did a little bit ago was we removed our check valve in the side here and we put a gauge on. And when we did that, when I had it fired up, didn't have any directional control. And this directional unit here, you can see it kind of, in this directional unit here, you can see kind of works this lever down here. and it's a hydraulic unit, so we weren't getting anything there after we messed with that. So we're going to go ahead and reinstall our check valve and fire it up. I myself am fairly confident about our check valve here. So anyway, we're going to fire it up again and just keep working through it. All right, here we go again. Crank her over. Hey, now we got some pressure. Definitely got some pressure out of our pump. Now let's put it in gear and see if we got direction again. So when I put it in gear, it changed? Yep. So now, let's let the clutch out. Oh, would you look at that? All right, that's what we like to see. Switch our direction here. All right, messing around with our hydraulics here. When I push my foot in on the clutch, a lot of our pressures change, which is a good sign. So let's take a look here. Clutch in. We lose all pressure, clutch out, and it's actually wanting to almost peg the gauge. It's losing a little pressure as the hydraulics warm up. We got good pressure here. Go ahead and put it in gear. Well, we're trying to put it in gear. Good stuff. All right, we got our line up to our front pump plugged, since we believe that that's the issue. So now the only path for this fluid to travel is up through here. It kind of tees into that main line and into our bucket here. This is probably dangerous, but again, you know, we're kind of green on our hydraulics, so we're just gonna fire it up and see what happens, I guess. Got a little throttling valve that we may or may not touch, I'm not sure, but I guess we'll fire it up, and if we got flow out of here, then we're totally sure that our gear pump inside of our case here is good, and all we have to do is replace our front pump, and we'll be up and running. All right. Open that valve wide open, just wide open. I'll be confident if anything comes out of there. All right, I'm definitely not going to be anywhere close to that, you're right. All right, here we go. Getting any flow out of it? What? Can you see any flow? Uh-oh. There ain't no flow. That's a bad sign. So where we are right now is when we plug that line, and this guy here tees into that main pump line, so that's not necessarily even bad now, since we're not getting flow out of here, but our directional valve is working and our gauges all read good, so our pump back here is working. So this is kind of where that supply line comes out, and here's the return line. And somehow it's not coming out of this supply line, but we know we're getting it to here because it's working. We know it's able to at least bypass somewhere within the system, or you know, it'd be a bomb. You know, fluid's got to be going somewhere. So I guess we're going to do a little more research and see what we can't figure out. Yeah, there's something stuck on that valve causing it to bypass. You can see the porting. It's just looping. It has to be just looping right there. So there is something in that. Well, we found another line up in here before the one that we're teed into with our gauge, and it possibly could be returning from this point. So to make it even more dangerous, we went ahead and plugged and capped this off. So Gonna fire it up and give it one more shot. Hopefully we don't have to get into some of those hydraulic bodies there, but either way, I'm sure it's something we can tackle just fine. Yeah, it's not something you'd want to have go through your hand, so
Right,
okay.
hopefully we got enough starter.
I think we do. All right, here goes nothing. Nothing at all. Drat. Well, crap. Hydraulic bodies have to come apart. So we've kind of narrowed it down to, since that bypass didn't work, you know, it's bypassing the fluid within this body here. And so just taking a look before we pull the whole body off, there was this plug, and on the print it had an O-ring and a spring on it, and you can see the spring right there is a little bit worse for wear. So we're not sure what that means per se, but you know, definitely something to look into within that body. So we factored out everything else before and everything else after. So this is our point of failure currently. Who knows what lies ahead of us as we move forward, but we can't count out that front pump actually yet. But every time we've run this, you know, we're kind of running that pump somewhat dry, so it's not making a lot of clatter, so it must already be gone. But anyway, we're definitely going to dive deeper into this in the next bit and figure out what's going on.